Well, Jim can't sit. He's not going to sit. He stands. He can't sit in this chair. But if anybody wants or needs to, you're welcome. And then I've got, be careful though. These are not family stable. Nobody, well, I mean, you can all stand. These are just chairs. We only started putting chairs out last week. We didn't have chairs for over a year, period. But you can stand, you can sit, whatever you're comfortable. Please be careful what you do. Is that all right with you? Are you?
Probably better.
If you'd like to step up a little closer, you're welcome to do so. You'll be in the Zoom now. Yeah. What's the protocol? Do we take our It's up to you.
It's up to you. I will take mine off because I'll be further away and then you can hear me better.
Well,
And when you speak, I think it would be good to have that. Stand here now, ready to perform the custom known as Kuya, or prayer. It refers to the ancient tradition of rending one's garment when a loved one dies. We tear these ribbons as a symbol of the pain we feel deep in our hearts. We first learn about Kuya in Genesis, when our patriarch Jacob believed his son Joseph was dead and tore his garments. Likewise, in the second book of Samuel, we are told King David and all the men with him have folded their clothes and rent them upon hearing of the death of Saul and Jonathan. Job too, in grieving for his children, stood up and rent his clothes. And now for our hearts, which are also torn, we too perform this act. Yeah. Respond after me. Baruch atah Adonai. Praise for you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe. Now you'll, as Jerry's demonstrating, I want to take from the bottom of yours. We're gathered here today to honor the life and the memory of Bob Hochman, to join our hearts together to give comfort and strength to his family. Death has come to him as it does to all persons. Death brings to our minds and hearts the common concerns and shared destiny of humankind. We're drawn together by deep felt emotions and are reminded of the essential community that lies beneath the many divisions of humanity on earth. Our lives and the lives of our loved ones are rooted in a profound mystery, past our understanding. In the face of eternity, we are made simple. Though we know our destiny is to tarry but a while, the time of separation brings anguish and grief. May we bear our burden bravely. May we struggle through the darkness with courage to find our way again. We begin our service with recitation of poetry, psalms, and prayers, thus linking Bob's life with the millennia-old tradition of the people of Israel and the eternity of God. Adonai ro'i lo echsar, v'nodesha yavitzeni, omeni l'chot yanachaleni, nafshi yeshovev, gam peni v'ma'ad le'tzedek v'ma'an shemo, gam ki elech v'getz ha'mavet, lo yivara yata imadi, shivtucha u'mishantecha, hema yanachamini, ha'aroch lefanai shochan neged sorarai, mishanta b'shemen roshi, hosi revaya, Af tov v'chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai. V'shavti b'beit Adonai l'orach yamin. Translation for Psalm 23. You may feel free to join in to that. Adonai is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside still waters, and restores my soul. You lead me in right paths for the sake of your name. Even when I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and staff, they comfort me. You have set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever. There is a time for everything, a time for every experience under heaven, a time for being born and a time for dying, a time for planting and a time for uprooting the planted, a time for destroying and a time for healing, a time for tearing down and a time for building up, a time for weeping and a time for laughing, a time for wailing and a time for dancing, a time for throwing stones and a time for gathering stones, a time for embracing and a time for refraining from embraces, a time for seeking and a time for losing, a time for keeping and a time for discarding, a time for caring and a time for sowing, a time for silence and a time for speaking, a time for loving and a time for hating, time for war, and a time for peace. God, you give us loved ones and make them the strength of our life, the light of our eyes. They depart and leave us bereft on a lonely way. But you are the living fountain from which our healing flows. To you the stricken look for comfort and the sorrow-laden for consolation. Oh God, we see life as through windows that open on eternity. We see that love endures and the soul endures, as you, oh God, endure forever. We see that the years are more than grass that withers, more than flowers that fade. They weave a timeless pattern in the world that is the dwelling place of your love and glory and glory. Mourning is the price we pay for having the courage to love others. Even in grief, we know that the wonder of human life is too complex and too magnificent to be memorialized in endless pain. The gifts of spirit our loved ones gave us cannot be measured or weighed, nor can they be lost or even tarnished by time. Even in our darkest hours, we know that some of their light and their warmth will always be with us, bringing comfort and courage, and in the fullness of time, healing and peace. In his sorrow, Job cried out, Adonai Natan, Adonai Lakach, Yifisham Adonai Mevarach. God has given, God has taken away. Blessed be the name of God. In ancient people, we are well acquainted with grief in the valley of shadows. Death and sorrow are not strangers to us. Yet the centuries have taught us that a good name endures beyond the grave, with their strength and faith. But Job would say, Adonai Natan, God, you have given. You gave us a loved one who will not be forgotten. For all that was good and enduring in his life, we offer the deepest thanks of our hearts. Adonai Lakach, God, you have taken away. We pray for the strength to turn our broken hearts into an altar of trust before which we acknowledge your sovereignty and love. As we now say, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevarach, blessed be the name of God, now and forever. So I'd like to offer Jim an opportunity to share a few words about his brother.
I would, thank you.
I can't I put this on you. So
Okay. All right. I just want to say a few words about my brother. A few things that some people may not know. He should have been a social worker, number one. He really, really cared about other people. He was so good to my parents. When my father died in '99, he was with my mother constantly helping her out. And he worried about other people until it was kind of too late for him to do anything but worry about himself. Just a couple vignettes though about him. There's a nice picture of my brother and me sitting. The picture of the article in the Dayton Daily News, probably about 1950. And once in a while, I run across my copy, and Marla said she has one. But Bob and I were sitting on the fountain in the courtyard of the Dayton Art Institute before it was changed. And they used to have peacocks and all kinds of things. And unless you're as old as I am and you can remember what the Art Institute was like at that time, this would all be foreign to you. But we used to walk over there from where we lived, and we loved the birds and the animals, and then we would wander through the museum. And I don't know whether Bob continued that. When that picture was taken, I was probably 9 or 10, and he was 2.5 years younger than me. But you know, unless you would know, I'm sure at that time you would never know that Bob used to go over there and wander around just like I did and enjoy the paintings and that type of thing. But if there was anybody that should have had a theme song, it would be my brother, and it would be My Way, Frank Sinatra. There's just no question about it. I have a couple of vignettes that I want to share with you. One is when I turned 18, he was still 15 and a half. And he said to me, I want to buy you a beer on your birthday. I said, what? He said, no, I want to buy a beer, but you're going to have to drive. So I get in the family jalopy, and he tells me where to go. We're going down towards Lower Salem Avenue, and then we're crossing over Salem Avenue to the other side. And eventually he tells me to stop, and there's a bar. We walk into the bar, and everybody says, hi, Bob. and the bartender says, who's your friend? It's my brother. I want to buy him a beer. And the bartender puts 2 beers on the bar. I sit down, have my beer. He has a beer. When we get back in the car and drive back home. And to this day, I've never been able to find out how he got there, how he knew these people. But everybody, hi, Bob. 15 and a half. So now here's something else. I'm going to fast forward a lot to just a few years ago. And Bob had a minor operation. I think it was a hernia operation, but he had a little inflammation or something. So after 2 or 3 days, they said, you probably ought to go somewhere. Don't go home. You got too many steps in your house and there's nobody there to take care of you. So Gene and I went to Friendship Village. We got him a nice room. Figured he'd stay there for a week, comfortable. We'd make sure he had everything that he needed. We went back the next day, parked the car, go into the room, had a couple other things with him. The room was vacant. I finally traced somebody who knew. They said, oh, he checked himself out. I found out that Bob had not only checked himself out less than 24 hours after we took him there, but he walked home with whatever he had in his hands, whatever he had at the hospital. He walked home. So obviously we go to his house and he said, well, I didn't like it there. So, but he must have liked it at the hospital because he really didn't want to leave the hospital. But since that time, I can tell you that Bob was still so sweet to us, and I hope everybody else. But in spite of the fact that he had a lot of trouble getting out of the house, getting around, until I think this most recent birthday, Gene and I always got birthday cards, and I think on other occasions we got cards with him. I mean, those were, and I see everybody in the back, my daughter and Danny shaking their heads, same thing. I mean, he cared so much about other people in spite of the fact that he had many, many problems of his own. He had a great heart. You know, most kids when they were young would be known to squash an ant or tear the wings off of a fly. Bob could never do that. I'm sure of it. He loved to go down to the creek with me. We would ride our bikes down, or sometimes down to the Little Miami River and look for crawdads and salamanders and stuff like that, and then later on fish. But he would never hurt anybody. So, as I said, Bob's theme song was "Do It My Way." He did it his way. He's with the rest of our family over here. My mother, my father, my mother's grandparents, and my sister Francine. So we're united once again, Bob. We love you and miss you. Thank you, Karen.
When we confront the death of a beloved one, we become conscious of time's steady flow, and we plead, as did the psalmist of old, "Limnot yameinu ken todah, v'navi levav chokhmah." So teach us to number our days that we may get us a heart of wisdom. And yet, how can one number one's days wisely? And a simple total of the days we spend in the world, is it really significant? There are people who live their lives whose years well exceed the proverbial 70, and yet, when they pass away, only a death notice in the newspaper serves to let the world know that that individual had lived. No, it is not simply the number of days that one lives that is significant. Significance lies rather in the use that one makes of the hours granted one. It is to experience what life has to offer, both its sorrows and its joys, its frustrations and its accomplishments. to become deeply involved in the lives of others, to give freely of one's love and affection. To feel oneself loved and appreciated is to live wisely. Then, when one's hour has come, one has left behind him a legacy of memories to be treasured by children, honored by family and friends. When one has lived a life such as this, one can be grateful that God has granted them a heart of wisdom so that one might fill one's days with significance. Bob was blessed with a heart of wisdom, and his life had significance to his family, his friends, and his community. As we've already so lovingly heard, Bob knew everyone, especially his neighbors. We're told that he would give his shirt off of his back for anyone. I'm told that he was, as one might say, the original Mr. Mom, use Daniel's expression, because at the time in the 80s, it wasn't usual for a man to be a caregiver as the main caregiver. But Daniel remembers all of the times that his dad was able to be at home and to care for him, to take him to school, to help out at his school at Hillel, making dinner, and especially cleaning the house. We're told that he made sure that everything was always immaculate up until the day he died. He had an excellent sense of humor. It seems like it could be a joke that he walked in at 15 and a half and knew everybody. And that would be a great sense of humor because I love that story. But Daniel shared also another one that was actually a joke, which was when he moved out to Kansas, he drove out with Daniel to help him settle in. And he went into a thrift store and he bought him this 3 feet tall stuffed animal dog, a bloodhound, that he cleverly named Cletus. Now, Bob thought that it would be really funny, just absolutely hilarious to tell people that Daniel had gotten a dog, but not to let on that the dog wasn't real. So he kept this ruse up for a few weeks until they got in a little too deep. Once family and friends discussed sending gifts for the new dog, such as food, Daniel realized he would have to fess up. He and his father cherished that memory. It's always brought up with that. Another thing that he was known for was his identity as a mall walker. Apparently, he was dubbed the mayor of the mall. He, again, made sure that he knew everyone, including the people that he would pass as he walked around. In fact, he ended up coordinating gatherings, and I think even a fashion show for all of those mall walkers. He was also known to be a car buff. He had a 65 Dodge Coronet that was his mother's, but he kept it in pristine condition, which, as he kept everything immaculate, I wasn't surprised. But while he was able to make some improvements to the car, such as adding air conditioning, there were some things that were not so easy. Daniel remembers, instead of like a snow day, that he actually had car days that he got to stay home from school because the car wasn't able to get up the hill without the forward or the front wheel drive. You know, only kids can use that today. In addition to cars and car shows, Bob loved arts and antiques, and his business was with custom awards that he had done with his own father. Daniel's telling me of a funny race that his father had against the Oscars. Apparently, some of the trophies that he made for the labor union were made by the same company that actually produces those awards at the Oscars that everyone knows very well. And was it that they were stolen? Something happened, they disappeared. No awards that year for the Oscars. That was a problem. And so that year, the company had to put his order on hold in order to get the Oscars done first. And he almost missed the deadline, but apparently he's a really good planner. So it definitely, he was able to make it. There was enough lead time for that. And it's an excellent story as well. Of all the things that he was proud of, and there were many, Bob was also so unbelievably proud of his family. Daniel for all of his accomplishments, his great independence, but not just Daniel. He was proud of his entire family. He was proud of the the relationships that he had nurtured. And apparently, in addition to the bar, he knew everyone in the town as well, such as the chief of police, postal workers. When I think of someone who was really able to establish relationships with nearly everyone, I think Bob will always come to mind. I know that it's a challenge for us to say goodbye to such a loving soul. But I know that it's time for him to go and to rest in peace. Obviously, words are never sufficient, never enough to this effort. But now it's time that we let him go into the safety of God's eternal embrace. Zichrono livracha, may his memory be a source of blessing among us. As for now, a miracle is over. The unique and precious human being is no more to our sight, but a new miracle begins. Our tradition calls it shalom, peace. His eternal soul ascend to heaven and rest in peace forevermore. Amen. Now take just a few moments of silence for our own thoughts and prayers as we reflect on the unique ways that Bob touched our own lives. To your care, O God, we entrust the spirit of Robert Hochman. For you keep faith with your children in death as in life. Sustain us that we may meet with serenity the mysteries that lie ahead, knowing that when we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you, God, are with us, a loving friend in whom we put our trust. You are the light of our life, our hope in eternity. We continue now with the traditional El Malei Rachamim prayer. El Malei Rachamim, Shochem Bamramim, Hamitzei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei HaShekhinah, in Kedoshim, Utehorim, Zohar Harakia Mazkirim, Et Nishmat Robert Hochman, Shehalach La'olamo, Ba'al Harachamim, Yastarehu B'Seter K'Nefav La'olamiri, Vayitzror B'Tzror HaChayim Et Nishmato, Adonai Kunachalato, Yanuach Bashalom Al Mishkavo, Nomara. Amen. God of abundant mercy, God most high, may the soul of our loved one who is gone into eternity find the gift of perfect peace in your embrace, together with the holy and pure, whose light shines like the radiance of heaven. Compassionate God, hold him close to you forever, so that his soul may be bound up in the bond of life eternal. May he find a home with you. May he rest in peace. And together let us say, the dust returns to the earth as it was. The spirit returns to God who gave it. It is only the house of the spirit which we now lay within the earth. The spirit itself cannot die. By the love and eternal connection of our souls, give us strength as we turn to recite the words hallowed by time. Sanctifying the name of God, we honor the memory of Bob Hochman with the words of Kaddish Yatom, the mourner's Kaddish. Please join me if you're able in reciting Kaddish. It's familiar with, if it is familiar to you. Yitgadal, Yitgadash, Shemei Rabah, Yalmad, Yibra, Yitei, Yamim, V'chayecho, V'yomecho, V'chaye, V'chol, Beit Yisrael, V'agala, V'zman Karim, Yehesh, V'olam, V'arach, V'alam, V'lalmei Almaya, V'arach, V'tabach, V'al, V'tamam, V'tadar, V'talel, V'tala, Shemei, V'shach, Ve'ela, V'chol, V'yirchata, V'shirata, V'shvachata, V'nechemata, V'amirat, V'alma, V'imru, Yehi Shlomo, Rabba, V'Shemaya, V'chaim, Aleinu, V'al Kol Yisrael, V'imru,
Amen.
V'shalom, V'romav, V'ya'aseh Shalom, Aleinu, V'al Kol Yisrael, V'imru. May God grant peace to those who mourn and comfort all the bereaved among us, as Bob comes to his eternal home in peace. Amekomo Yavo Bashalom. May he come to his eternal home in peace. In the Jewish tradition, there is a tradition to place earth into the grave. It is considered one of the highest mitzvot, a righteous act which we do without any hope of reward. With this act, we take on the responsibility of caring for our loved ones until the very end. Our loved ones deserve to be buried by kind hands, knowing hands, sorrowful hands. I'd like at this time to invite, for those who are able, the immediate family to come to participate in this mitzvah. It is a painful act, one of love and compassion, however, for those who have meant so much to us. And after the immediate family members, please feel free to participate in this mitzvah as well.
Oh.
If there's anyone who needs a seat in the meantime, please feel free to take one of the seats. At this time, this concludes the official part of the ceremony, but please feel free to stay and to help participate in this act of helping to put earth on the grave. Jim, and to Daniel, say, be comforted among all who mourn for Zion and Jerusalem. Hearts are with you, and we hope that this service will serve some consolation as you go through your grief. God bless you. This concludes our service. Thank you for being here.